this panel, we aim to reflect on the convergence of memorial processes, the field of entertainment, and digital spaces. We understand memory as a social, political, cultural, and even affective process in permanent flux. All the functions and practices of memory account for its dynamism. As such, we consider entertainment as an important vehicle for memory, especially nowadays due to the internet and all the digital spaces it offers. Entertainment, through its varied products, has portrayed historical topics, thus triggering memory issues in the public sphere, many of which have been silenced. Within the realm of TV shows, an iconic case is the series Roots, broadcast in the United States in 1977. Roots was the first TV show to present audiences with notable events in US history, such as slavery. The Oscar-winning film, The Imitation Game, was as successful as it was notorious for its misrepresentations of history. The enormous positive audience response on social networks proves the extent to which precisely these films that bend and break historical accuracy can have an enormous impact on cultural, collective, and social memory. In the comic book Persepolis, we take part in the Islamic Revolution through the eyes of Marji, a little Iranian girl. Marjan Satrapi's graphic memories were first published as an autobiographical series in France between 2000 and 2003. In just a few years, the comic was translated to more than 20 languages and also made its way around the world as a film. Many tourist sites in the world are located where historical events related to wars, massacres, and crimes against humanity occurred. An example of this is the case of the Cu Chi tunnels in Vietnam, where tourists can experience and see representations of how daily life was lived in these tunnels during the war. For example, how a birth would have been carried out. Just as in these well-known cases, also in Latin America, entertainment media revisit the past as an input for their productions, while digital spaces stimulate discussions and connections with various audiences. To analyze this kind of dynamics, in this panel we will focus on Colombia and Chile. What is the past we are interested in investigating here? The Colombian armed conflict began around the mid-60s as a low-intensity, symmetric war between the government of Colombia and far-left guerrilla groups. Over the years, other armed forces entered the picture, such as the far-right paramilitary groups. The conflict is historically rooted in the 10-year civil war known as La Violencia, that began around 1948 and was fought mainly in the countryside. Ever since, Colombia has faced a juxtaposition of different political, economic, and social conflicts that transform and keep on going, namely guerrilla struggles, counter-guerrilla efforts, drug trafficking, and struggles for land and resources between multinational corporations and grassroots organizations. The aftermath has been frightening. Between 1958 and 2013, according to the National Center for Historical Memory, over 220,000 people were killed, most of them civilians, and since 1985, at least 5 million people were forced out of their homes, making Colombia's internally displaced population the second largest in the world. Over the last decade, different facets of the Colombian armed conflict have been portrayed in comics and soap operas, or telenovelas in Spanish. Comics, in their analog and digital formats, have become increasingly popular as media addressing complex and sensitive issues such as the forced disappearances due to the conflict. There are more and more webcomics made by a wide range of authors which are reaching new audiences. Similar to these comics, soap operas have also constructed historical memory about the armed conflict in spite of receiving strong criticisms. These soap operas have been widely disputed, and social networks are one of the most important spaces for these debates. A clear example of this is a social network campaign in 2013 which protested against a telenovela about 3 paramilitary leaders and their victims. Both comics and soap operas are beloved media that are changing local and international perceptions of historical memory about the armed conflict in Colombia, mainly thanks to the dissemination through the internet. In 1961, a group of about 300 German colonists had acquired an area of 3,000 hectares in southern Chile and began to develop it. The colonization project began with the relocation of an evangelical community from Germany to Chile. The project managed to become as economically successful as it was infamous for becoming a torture camp later on. Colonia Dignidad, a German settlement that worked closely with the secret service under Pinochet's military dictatorship, was accused of numerous human rights violations. Hermetically sealed off from the outside world, they built an autonomous colony with its own hydroelectric power station, a school, and a hospital. However, the facade of a successful model settlement obscured the fact that the leader of the sect, Paul Schäfer, raped numerous of the children and set up a repressive system of coercion. Secondary literature speaks of a state within a state with gender segregation, forced labor, punishments, and religious rights. Once the sexual abuse of children became known in the 1990s, the police acted. Even though Paul Schäfer escaped to Argentina and was only captured in 2005, this marked an end to more than 4 decades of impunity. Without their former leader and his victimizing system, the inhabitants of Colonia Dignidad, now called Villa Baviera, began a slow process of transformation. They married, moved to other places, restructured hierarchies and patrimony. In 2005, they began to develop a Bavarian-style tourist attraction there, which has generated new conflicts around this use of the past. In 2015, the film Colonia by director Florian Gallenberger drew attention to the case of Colonia Dignidad, which subsequently led to a change in German foreign policy. The German foreign minister cut the protection period for the associated files in the political archives of the Federal Foreign Office by 10 years, thus making the files publicly accessible to researchers and media alike. An aid fund for the victims of Colonia Dignidad was also established. It is hence an example of how the representation of a historical incident may encourage a political re-examination of the past. The panelists will discuss the following questions for their respective case studies.